different looking face whenever we do go live. We have Dr. Hobson typically gets us kicked off. She actually had something come up to where she's a little engaged at the moment, but she should be joining us here shortly. But we're the Black Podcast, guys. We started this show. We started this show 2.5 years ago, August the 5th of 2020. Literally smack dab in the middle of the first year of COVID was when we kicked off this show, and we really wanted to be able to bring together bright minds from across the world who have done things of excellence throughout the community, who have come from various different places that we can relate to, but have gotten to where it is they desire to get to. So we really aim to help individuals, not just within our community, but in the community abroad, understand that we are not, as they say, we're not a monolith. We don't all look the same, sound the same, do the same, so on and so forth. There's a spectrum of who we are, what we have to bring to the table. So the young lady that we're going to be bringing to you today is going to be in her own unique right in that along that spectrum, and we definitely look forward to sharing her story with you. For those of you who may be new viewers, my name is Brian Street. Brian Street, MSW to be specific. My background is in psychology, social work, and really I do most of my work in the social entrepreneurship space. So I help people see problems, see issues in society, and develop a business to rectify, to do something for that specific problem. So that's a lot of my day to day. I do a lot of work also with universities, developing curriculum, auditing curriculum, helping put together mentorship programs, so on and so forth. And Dr. Hobson and I, we kind of met in that space of understanding that there's so much that young men who are transitioning into adulthood from sports into another level of life, there's so much that they need that they don't really have in place. And we're looking to develop partnerships to help put those things in place. So off that note, y'all hear me talk enough. So I'm going to get ready to go ahead and introduce our guest for today. And really, I want you guys to take note because what she is titled as, or a part of her title, it really speaks to what we need to be focusing on today. And I'll go a little bit deeper into what I mean once we introduce her and you see what her title is. You see some of the things that she's doing. It'll make a whole lot of sense for you. So without further ado, we bring to you Miss Jade Tenner. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are glad to have you. And I was looking at your LinkedIn and just the different titles that you had there in your bio. And on a quarterly basis, a partner of mine and I, we do a training for entrepreneurs, helping them just kind of reset the quarter. And one of the focuses is branding. And one of the things that we really like have to hammer in on is when you just think about people in general in life, usually they have a reputation. They're
Mhm.
known for something. When people hear their name, they feel a certain way. When people see them, they start thinking a certain something. Well, that's the same thing as a brand, but it's on a
Absolutely.
different scale. So before we even get down or go down that rabbit hole, um, we just actually I see my co-host, Dr. Hobson. Man, see y'all
Hey,
come up here looking all fly. I gotta go shave a
Yeah.
little bit,
Hey,
clean.
you better step your game up. I know Miss J because I said let me step my game
look,
up
girl,
today.
you look good. You look
You
great.
can't be the only one on here. She can't be the only one.
Yeah,
I need to make
You
sure
look
my
great.
brand is represented. But
Come on
thank
now.
you so
for
much
sure.
again for being on the Black Podcast. So we
Absolutely.
know that behind every glory is a story. And we like to start from the very beginning. You know, we see all the fancy things that you're doing. And from the outside, from the pictures, from the videos, we're like, wow, her life must have been so easy, so amazing, no challenges, no trials, no tribulations. But we like to know the truth about what's behind those pictures. How did you get started? So where are you from? And let us know, let the audience know what's the dynamics of your family, like how did you grow up, and kind of take us through that journey.
I am from a small town in Texas, Canyon, Texas. My mom, I was raised in a single family home, so just me and my mother. My mom was a collegiate standout. She played basketball at West Texas A&M, so that's how we ended up in Canyon, Texas. I followed along in her footsteps. blessed to have my grandmother, my great grandparents, and my great great grandmother until I was 14. So I had a lot of family and a lot of generations in my life, the majority of my life. So far, the numbers are getting away from me there now. But played basketball. Like my mother, I was actually a triathlete, volleyball, basketball, track. I sang in chorale. I participated in clubs, sports clubs, FCA, just really involved. My mom always told me I didn't have to, be a basketball player like she was. I just needed to be good at something. And so therefore I just decided to be good at everything. In my mind, I was good at everything. My childhood was I, my memory is fading the older I get, but I don't remember anything negative about my childhood. Now that I'm an adult, I know that that's just a part of life. A child, you grow up and you go through things. So those things that I thought maybe were a big deal back then, really in retrospect, were not. And when I thought my mom was being mean, that's not what she was doing. She was parenting. And so now that I'm older, I can see that. So um played basketball. That was my ticket to college. I went to UMKC, Division One, full ride scholarship. Played there all 4 years. Was very involved in campus there. Participated in clubs, pageants, everything that I could do. And I feel like as an athlete in those spaces, a lot of times athletics, for lack of a better word, is kind of a cult. They want you to focus on being an athlete first and then a student, without really giving you a lot of real world experience. It's more so take what you learn on and off the court or on or off the field and then apply that to real life. But in real life, you interact with other people that are not athletes. So I took it up on myself to, kind of spread my wings and get outside of that and get involved in things on campus. And basketball has been it's a love-hate relationship, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, literally.
Yeah.
But it put me in a position to travel the world, to meet so many people, and to kind of hone in on my confidence as somebody in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was gonna kind of jump in. I don't mean to cut you off. Just I don't want you to get too far
Sorry.
where you're at now. But so I totally get about being an athlete. So I was a Division I athlete. I ran track.
Okay.
I played basketball in high school. Um, but I was the basketball girl that my job was to steal the ball, get it back down court as fast as you can, and give it to the shooter because you can't shoot.
Oh,
So, and I was good. I was good with that because I just wanted the
we all
W.
have our roles,
Right.
okay?
I was good with that. As long as we get the W, I didn't care.
Yeah.
And so, on that journey, and then you talked about being an athlete. Um, Athletics can be a positive or a negative thing, right? Depending on your experiences with it, the coaches, and the experiences are different for young men, because a lot of times they have the desires of being in the NFL and all those kind of stuff, and so they're not really given the tools that they need in order to be successful, and that's the space that I operate in. To help those young men understand who they are within athletics so they can have a transition, right? But what I noticed as a woman being in athletics, when I got older, I I didn't know. I knew who I was, but it was almost like track was like my mask, right? I didn't realize that I had so many things that I dealt with as a person, as a woman, when the track stuff was over. And I tried to fill that gap with being a track coach, being in education, still
Mhm.
fulfilling that track need. And then when I separated myself from that after 17 years, I'm like, okay, now I have to play. Now I got to be like a real woman, like without the track. And so
That was
I want you to I remember when my brother passed away, I started to see a grieving counselor, and we were just talking. And so she said, when you think about life, what do you think about? And I was like, winning. Everything I must win. And she's like, who where'd you get this from? Right. And so the only people that get it are athletes. They're like, yeah, you gotta win. I mean, you ain't trying to lose. Like everybody else is
right.
looking at
Come
you
on
like,
now.
yeah, everybody else is like, win what? I'm like, I don't know. I need to be winning spiritually. I need to be winning financially. I need to be winning personally, like winning in my own little winning world, right?
Absolutely.
But I realized that it wasn't the same as the effort that you put in athletics. You can see it on the court, you can see it on the track. But sometimes when you put that same effort into your personal life or your business, you may not see it right away. And so I had to learn how to deal with transitioning the skills that I met or I had from being an athlete to now being in the regular world, talking to regular people that they don't care about winning, right? They're like, oh, I just doing it for fun. You're like, what?
What does that even mean?
Like lose what? Like what do you mean? Like you ain't trying to win, So I want you to just speak on kind of in that space, right? Because it's more for us than just getting to Division 1. You get there, you get the scholarship, you get the degree, but there's a whole lot of things that you start to learn and discover about yourself when you start transitioning from college to getting a job or whatever else that you decide to do. I want you to speak more on what that athletic space looked for you when you were in college and then transitioning to, did you already know who you were? What was the journey like for you when you're transitioning? Did you know what you want to do after college? Like kind of just in that space, what did that look like for you?
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So there were 3 things that my mom always told me growing up. One was to be aware of my surroundings at all times. 2, never volunteer unnecessary information. And 3, that I am at that time, I am a girl before I am a basketball player. And so in college, again, they're focused on it's student athletes it's supposed to be student athlete, but at higher levels it's athlete than student.
Student.
Absolutely. And so for me transitioning into college, it was D1 or nothing for me. And that was more so, me kind of being in competition with my mom. Again, collegiate standout, all-American, like she was that lady. So she went to a D2. So my whole thing was D1 or nothing. And my mindset I was gonna play basketball forever. Mine was basketball is gonna afford me this piece of paper. And then when I got there and I seen, what it was, it took me it felt like going against my coaches or going against my team because I wanted to do other stuff outside of basketball. I wanted to be at all the parties. I wanted to be involved in anything that is social and outside. And again, Canyon, Texas is a predominantly white town. So I am what we consider the token. And that was my role. And
That came with a whole nother set of responsibilities, I'm sure. So we'll talk
absolutely,
about that.
and it still does. I still operate in that space a lot now, and it's comfortable for me because that's my whole life. So when I got to college, even though I went to a PWI, it was still a lot more Black people than I was used to. So I'm trying to get in the mix. I'm trying to see what's going on, and it wasn't until probably my junior year. My junior year was like a really crucial year for me because I went into college as a sophomore technically because of all the credits and stuff that I took in high school. And so my senior year, it was, I'm graduating undergrad a semester early. What am I going to do with this time, with this space. And basketball, again, afforded me a lot of opportunity. We had boosters that supported our team. And, my first job came from one of our loyal supporters. And my transition was a lot easier than most. I think for me, and what coaches always say in that space, and we just be looking at them like, bro, shut up. My legs are burning. My heart is pounding out of my chest when they keep telling. It's all mental. It's all mental. It's really not. My legs are really burning and my heart is really pounding out of my chest. But now, and in that my junior year, trying to figure out how I'm going to transition. Do I want to live off campus? Because I can now. Am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to take care of myself? And the transition for me was a lot easier than some, because we did have that support. But in my mind, it's like, well, who am I now that I'm not a basketball player? Like, I'm about to graduate. Who is Jade now that she is not an athlete? And for those, I would say probably 6 months, I was like, I'm never touching another ball again. I got my piece of paper. That's all I came here for. And 6 months, I did a little modeling, and, tried to dabble in some things, but I was like, I'm gonna go back and play basketball. So I played for a semi-pro team in Kansas City. I had the opportunity to travel overseas for a little bit, and then came back, and then I got hurt. Dislocated my kneecap in the championship game of the Pro-Am, and we lost. I always have to put that in there because I really got hurt for no reason.
Right. You're like, I really could have still tried to play.
Yeah, I really could have, And in that moment, I had no choice but to figure out who I was now that I am no longer a basketball player. I wasn't trying to come back. I'm too scared to play. I don't want to get hurt. I want to be able to run and play with my kids whenever I have some of those. So I did the same thing. I tried to coach. I coached 7th grade girls, 4th grade girls. I refed. I did camps. I did the summer before I moved back to Texas. I lived in Kansas City for 8 years. So I stayed an additional 4 years after college. The summer before I moved back to Texas, I quit my job and I just drove around the country doing basketball camps just to get the feeling of like, who am I now that I'm not a basketball player? So that transition, if you don't go into that space with a plan, because again, for women or female athletes, when we go in, most of the time, for the majority of us, it's not because we're trying to go to the league. It's because this is about to pay for this piece of paper. Whereas young men, a lot of them, that is their dream, and they have support because they're good and they're talented, but they don't have the support in the space of telling them you need a plan B just in case, because anything can happen. An injury, a coach gets fired, we pick a new team. It could literally be anything that can disrupt your plan. So you need to have a backup just in case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times we don't talk about that, right? And so that was the space that I operated in when I started coaching. I was coaching young girls, and I spent a lot of time. I made sure that I gave them the coach that I never had, right? And this was my opportunity to be around other Black young ladies and Hispanic women, young girls, where I was able to say, hey, this is what we do. We don't talk loud. We're not yelling across the quad. We're going to make sure we look like young ladies, just teaching them life skills. And people couldn't understand, why don't you just coach? You're doing a whole lot of extra stuff. Just coach. And so I found myself always battling with people on what I felt coaching was about. But it was, for me, it was about building a relationship. And so I always stuck with, I teach life first, sports second. If I can teach you life, I can coach you anything, right?
Absolutely.
And so people couldn't understand, while we were still winning and showing up at the state championship meet, because I teach life. And when you build that relationship and that trust, it goes a long way. And so that's why we were talking about sports being, it could be a positive thing and it could be a negative thing. Because if you leave high school or college with no tool, a bag of tools, but nobody's told you how to use the tools in your toolbox, what good are the tools that you have? And so that's the issue that we have within athletics, is we're so focused on uh, producing great athletes, but we're not teaching them, what do you do when that time is up? Because it's not guaranteed that you're going to play for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years. Look at the young man that just got hit and his whole heart just stopped. You know, what now? And you're just now a rookie. Imagine all the pressure he has of his family, and people probably depend on him making all this money. And now that could be taken away from you, right? And so that's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure that a lot of our young men go through. But as women in going through athletics, you still have that sense of identity that you're trying to search for, right?
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about making that transition into what you're doing, you know, when you decided, okay, this is what I know I want to do, because you go through that stage of dipping and dapping, like you said. I'm 5'4", so the modeling thing was not probably not gonna work in my favor. But people used to throw me in it, right? Like, oh, you could be a fitness model. And I'm like, I really don't want to be in front of the camera, right? So like, I had this little constant like, oh, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should try this. Maybe I should do this. Okay, people say I'm good at this. But I never felt that satisfaction, because I was always trying to find what was going to give me that same thing that track felt like. When I step on the track, like I need something that's going to give me that same satisfaction.
Right.
So what was it for you that you were like, okay, I dabbed in this, I dipped in this, and the benefit, or I guess the one of the best thing or great things about your journey is that you being in a PWI and being able to be in that space of probably connecting with certain people, certain resources, being in spaces where now you can relate and talk in certain areas or in all rooms. You know, when did you finally get to that space where like, okay, I'm not dipping and dabbing in nothing else, I know that I want to do? And then what was that one thing, or was it still a journey, and how long was that journey for you?
Well, to be honest, I'm still dipping and dabbing. Okay. I'm still dipping and dabbing in a lot of different things, but I have honed in on my core focuses and what I'm best at. A lot like it's it's still taking some used to for me with the word influencer. And so I have to look at it a different way than how it's, used towards social media. And influencer is somebody that um, causes people to take action. So in that space, as an influencer, absolutely. I 100% own that. And I noticed that I've been doing that my whole life. Is I can command a room. I can hold my space in any room. And I think also it's because I have, being raised in a predominantly white community, I did have to conform, not knowing at that time because that's all I knew, but, now. And so, my core focuses are nonprofit development. um, I love helping people. And I believe that I have a responsibility on this earth, and God has put me in leadership positions to use my voice, to use my light to help the community. And so, nonprofit development, helping other people do the same thing in focuses that appeal to them, where they can give their all, is something I absolutely love to do. I have my own nonprofit organization, which our biggest initiative is support holistic development for young men through mentorship, scholarships, and technology. So we are entering in our 5th year. June 1st will be our 5th year as an organization, and we have done some amazing things. So I'm happy to just be in the space with you all talking about this, because I don't get to have these conversations a lot, being a woman working and whose biggest initiative is supporting young men. It's not understood, and I don't know why it's not understood, but that's my space. So nonprofit development. I am a global socialite, so any events, curating events. That is my passion projects. I love that. I love to provide an experience for people, and hopefully it's always a positive one. As well as business development. I know a lot of people are moving into that space of wanting to have a side hustle, and they're getting thrown all this information about LLCs and all these things. So just making things simple for people, like letting them know you don't necessarily need this right now to get started in what you're doing. So just coaching them, and anybody that I can help be successful that's a win for me. Like you said, I just want to win. I don't care who slam dunks it. I don't care who shoots the layup or the three. If I made the pass, I get the assist. We all win. Okay, we all get a medal at the end of the game. Okay, so that's all I am trying to do. And now, because I've honed in on those specific things that I am great at, I can dibble and dabble in different things because they align with those things that I am focused on, and that I know that I can be an asset to people in.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I love that you're in that space. I'm in that same space, where it is very difficult, and we can talk further and probably be on a whole nother show talking about this, but just being a woman, a Black woman in a very masculine space, it comes with its own set of challenges. And so, like I said, that's a whole nother conversation about that. But it takes a very special person to really understand what goes on when you're an athlete in the transition, right? We're hearing about more people now come out about their mental health, and it's starting. But there was a time where, as athletes, you better not say something wrong with you. Like, we were just taught to just move and shake. Now, how did you ever, even though you went to a PWI, did you ever find yourself being in a space where you were still trying to identify who you were? Was it like more like a make it, fake it? Like, I'm going to act like I belong? Because I know I had, what I learned later on, like insecurities, right? But if people saw me out, or if people saw me in a room, if people saw me in a track meet, you would never have known. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized, oh my God, I'm really struggling, like, with myself. Were you in what kind of space? Because you're saying that you were in this PWI and you're still operating that space. Did you always feel like I belong here, or was it things that you had to coach yourself up to feel like you belong there? Like, what was that? What is that space like for you?
Well, I would say in college, it was me fitting in was, how do I fit in with my people? Again, because I was raised by, I mean, not raised by, but raised with predominantly white people. So it was, and in our families, in our culture, it's a lot of, picking and poking and all that stuff. So white girl was, my family called me that my whole life. And they would do the voice, and I'm like, nobody talks like that in real life. But so when I got there, my very first probate, I was like, man, it's a whole bunch of Black folks out here. Like, so trying to fit in that space was, I wouldn't say difficult, but again, I was in the Midwest. It's not the same thing. They don't got the Southern hospitality, So it's trying to fit in and then break that barrier of like, hey, can you say hi back? Or, that type of space. And I just be comfortable. I'm a chameleon. Again, I think it's just my upbringing. And I thank my mom for that a lot, because there were coaches that were trying to get, us to move to the Black side of town, for me to come play at the Black school and do those things. And my mom stood firm in her decision, and sticking to where we were because my education and my opportunities were better. And a lot of parents been in that pressure because they don't know. And so I am very thankful to my mom for, sticking to her guns and allowing me to experience that. Now, we fast forward to 2023, I am okay. I am very much so Black. I went back to my 10-year high school reunion, knowing that this would probably be my first and last, because I am very much aware of who I am now. And now that I've had time as an adult to sit back and, think about my childhood and some of the instances and some of the things that have happened, again, I was the token, so I don't feel like I experienced a lot of prejudice or anything like that, but just knowing in the space, it's because I was who I was, and that there were some of my peers and classmates that didn't get the same type of love and treatment that I did. So that's really it. I just, been blessed because I had the opportunity to be around different people.
Brian.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
When he starts
First
rubbing
off,
his head, he's about to get deep. So I'm giving you a
nah,
heads up.
no, I'm gonna keep it shallow to start off. First off, I'm over here thinking. Whenever she first mentioned basketball, can she hoop? I bet she can't even hoop. Let me get her on the court one of these days.
Okay, now
And,
that's not it.
yeah, and then just fast forwarding, mentioning so much of what you did share as far as just really wanting to build like cultures of winning. I think it speaks to athletes that play in team sport, period. Like we want to know, okay, how can we make this shine? I don't have to be the one to shine. I just need to be part of helping it shine. So I like that you mentioned that because so many of us we want to be the one that's in the center of the flyer holding the basketball. Like you ain't always got to be that person, but you still can
I
be
was
a
that
major
person,
contributor.
but
Yes. I just went back and I was checking out the stat line here a little bit
don't
ago.
look at
But
that. That's not real. I was
no,
just
but
there for the piece of paper. Okay, there for the
hey, that's it, man. Like numbers don't tell the whole story.
paper.
Anyways, but I'm listening to some of the things that you've done, some of the things that you're currently doing, and it just speaks to. I just always bring it back to sports because if there's not one area in my childhood that helped me form who I am today, it was sports and it was JROTC.
Mhm.
So those two areas really helped me develop like a core of my belief system moving forward. But in saying all this, um, something that you mentioned that kind of stood out to me was really just in the space of having to become that person to get used to being around us, like so many of us,
Mhm.
because I grew up. My high school was predominantly white. Like there was probably less than 20 of us in the class of like 180. Um, I came to when I went to college, very diverse university, but like I wasn't. I had to get used to being around more black guys because it was just my cousins coming up. It was just like a
Right,
family.
right.
Yeah, like and then when I got to college, like I got hood guys over here. I got preppy black guys over here. I got the Q dogs over here. I got the Kappas over here. And I'm like, where do I fit? And it was during that time that I went from high school. I was a four sport athlete, started on a football team, um, played baseball, basketball, ran track. Like
Come on,
everybody knew me.
athlete. Come on,
Yeah,
athlete.
I was I was one of the the people who showed up all through the yearbook as who's who. doing this like Mr. Ebony and beauty and not beauty, but and pageants and everything. And I got to college and I was a nobody. Like nobody knew me. So I had to redevelop my identity, and it was during that first year that I really started to get in touch with who I was and like what I was going to be able to give to the world. And it was throughout those couple of years where it was really an identity crisis because all my life from the age of 4, I was a student athlete. So here I am in college now, and I'm just a student. That didn't make sense to me. How can you
Right.
just be a student? So it really threw me off course. But at the same time, I started to see other areas of myself come alive. So I became that support for other people around me who were going through things, and they just needed that that shoulder or that ear. I didn't know it at the time, but throughout that time of me not being focused, trying to figure out who I was, I got academically suspended. And when my daughter over here, I got academically suspended. So for those who don't know academic terms, like I was a college flunky, I got kicked out. So a lot of people don't realize that when they see me today and see all of my accolades and such. But it was during that time that I started to birth another version of myself, and I saw how I could use some of my athletics to be that that supporter, that whatever it was going forward in some of the spaces that I'm in now. So not to make it too much about myself, but you really, as we got started, I made reference to the brand enhancer and how we all have a brand already, and it's we call it a reputation. Like we're
Yeah.
known for something already, but when you have a brand, you really have the authority to control how people look at you. You have so much more that you can do to change how they feel whenever they hear your name, so on and so forth. So, just making a little shift. What got you into the space of being a brand enhancer, and kind of tell us like what is your definition of a brand enhancer?
Okay. Well, I don't know about a brand enhancer. As you can see, it says the brand
Mm.
enhancer. That is it. I have never heard anybody use that term. And if it is a
Mhm.
term that is used in the industry, then I totally missed over it. But I started saying that I am the brand enhancer because of my ability to get into corporate or nonprofit organizations and build their brands. Like that is my superpower. And a lot of these opportunities were one-off opportunities where this is the first um, position of its kind in the company, or it was forward facing. So that is where I honed in on, okay, I'm a 6 foot. I know you said you was 5'4", I'm a 6 foot
On the
chocolate.
weekend, on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, I'm six
You
foot.
go up a couple inches. Look, come on now.
Mhm.
But honed in on who I was, my stature, my demeanor, my ability to blend into any environment, to conversate with anyone, and elevate these businesses. And a lot of it was doing community outreach. Like when people talk about marketing, when people talk about branding and advertising, the words are so broad. There's so many intricate details that come along with each one of those things. But at the end of the day, word of mouth, grassroots, touching people, talking to people, being in the community is the end all be all. A lot of we're moving into this digital space. Obviously, COVID put that into rapid speed because that was our only way to communicate with people. But in order, these online stores and these online therapy, online doctor visits, all these things are cool because they're convenient. But what happens when you're really sick and you can barely walk? That doctor online can't take care of you. They can't tell you what's wrong. So building a brand, building a organization based in community is what has helped me be successful in these other organizations where I'm working for someone else. as well as help me be successful in what I'm doing on my own.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, and
Oh, I
I'm,
love this.
when I was in the space of, and that's kind of what me and Brian, one of the great things about our partnership is that we know our strengths, and our weaknesses. I'm a visionary, right? So I'm like, hey, I was thinking about this. We need to do this, and that. I'm thinking about now, how are we gonna get there? I don't know, but that's his specialty, right? So he's like, okay, well, first we're gonna have to take step one. I'm like, why can't we just go to step 5?
Right.
Like,
Well, big picture.
why does it take so long? Why is the process taking so long? Like, and so that's that balance. So in your space of branding, and I know you and Brian have more connections there, but if you can talk about just branding, where I feel like when I was in transitioning, one of the biggest or the most important thing I feel like for me was, number one, owning who you are. And the second thing would be um, really, once you know who you are, like really owning that, right? Because your brand is more than just putting something out on the internet. It's like you are the brand. Everything that you do, people are looking at you. So,
Mhm.
I used to say, okay, when I was speaking to athletes and I was talking to them about resiliency, and it's like, I got to look like I've overcome, right? I can't go up there looking like my life is over, talking about you can make it. They're gonna be like, you don't look like you making it, right? So, is that something that's a part of the branding, getting people to own like who they are within what they're doing? Like, what is your conversation initially going into that space with people who are just want the social media platform, they want that, oh man, look at my brand, but do they really know what comes with that brand being established? What comes along with that most people miss the mark on?
Absolutely. So, kind of playing off of something you said when you were coaching, you were teaching life first and then track second. And so I operate in the same space with my branding clients. Um, Obviously, it's a little bit easier when I'm working with companies or organizations because they've already outlined their mission and those and what they're focused on and all those things. But working with individuals who are trying to build their brand, I always go through this exercise first where I give them some cards, and on these cards there are different words, and from these, and it's like 100 cards. It's a lot of cards. So out of these 100 cards, I need you to pick 5 words that represent your morals and values. And I had to do the same thing. Mine is faith, responsibility, community, relationships, and leadership. Those are those things. And I know that because God has given me a position of leadership. And with that holds a lot of responsibility. And I do that by building relationships in the community. That is literally what I do. And so I make people go through these cards and figure out, what are your morals? What are your values? Because if it doesn't align with those things, then you shouldn't do it. If it doesn't align with those things, you shouldn't do it. If you have to think about if it aligns, if you got to fold it and mold it to make it fit those things, it is not something that you should be doing. And that is with your brand. For me, I'm not a drinker. I don't drink alcohol, and I go to a lot of events. Even sponsors that sponsor my event, I have liquor sponsors. I don't drink alcohol. My brand in that space of me not drinking alcohol is so strong that I don't have to say it anymore. People around me, when people come like, hey, you want to, just want to get a drink? She don't drink. Like, people are speaking for me, and you have to be that strong with your brand and your morals and your values that people can feel, that people can see that without you having to say anything. So being in that space, whatever your brand is, social media, life is lit. I look good. So whenever I step out in these spaces, that's the energy I bring. And I am naturally an optimistic person. Like, I don't focus on the problem. Let's find a solution. and get to it. Because life is always going to be hard. Life is always going to be lifing, and as coaches always said, it's all mental. It's all mental. So once you get past that little moment, have your moment, but what are you going to do next? And so when you're creating your brand, if something you do doesn't go as you plan, or people aren't receptive to it as you would like, be in that moment. What's next? So if it aligns with what your morals and values are, it should never be wrong, because it is your brand and your identity, or brand identity.
I'm gonna let Brian finish his questions, but I was just gonna say we need to hang out so that when everybody's offering you drinks, I can take the drinks. I'll take
All my friends, all my
Yeah.
friends. Yeah, I'll just pass them on over.
Invite Jade. Invite
But then
Jade
I'm
out.
the one stuck having the conversation, right? Okay.
You keep building the brand, and I'll keep,
Right.
building the drinks, keep bringing the drinks.
That works. That works.
Yeah, I might have to tag along too. Take a look, few off.
Yeah,
No, but
I got friends too.
man, listening to what you said about like you showing up at these functions, even though it may be, an alcoholic company, they already know like she don't drink. I mean, it's a whole notion. Like I go back to reputation. You know how the saying, "My reputation precedes me." Your reputation, like people know they're gonna think a certain thing before they even meet you because they know your reputation. So when we go out into the world, like building brands and such, every single person should have their own personal brand because one thing you hear or you have heard before last 5-10 years, you hear people say, "Well, I got a good government job. I'm good. I'm not worrying about that branding, that entrepreneurship stuff. No, I'm good." Or I've been here for X number of years. They ain't gonna get rid of me. But then we have these recessions. Or we have a government shutdown, and your government job ain't doing nothing for you. But
Oh,
if you have, and it's one thing I tell people, it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do or how much you love what you do. If you're working for someone else and you don't have your own brand in place, you're always at somebody else's witch. Like they can pull the rug out from under you no matter how loyal you've been. But, and I think it was not last week, yes, or maybe the week before, she was saying that whenever she works for someone else, she doesn't know when they're going to lay her off. But whenever she works for herself and she knows business isn't going right, she has a plan. I'm going to have to lay myself off if this doesn't go, according to plans in X number of months. Whereas we, especially in today's day, we have got to take control over the direction of our life. And one thing I I tell a lot of people, especially those who I train, is I can easily right now go and get a really good paying university job. 3 college degrees, a master's, a couple of years of doctoral studies. I can go and get a well paying job at a university. But the brand that I've been building for the last 4 or 5 years, I would pretty much throw that to the wayside when I got so much more control over there. I may not be making right now as much as I could have been making had I been working for someone for X number of years, but I put all the pieces of the puzzle together so that give me 5, 10 years. Like nothing that a university could pay would match what I'll be earning in the time. But it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone at the same capacity. I say that because it can be for everyone if you operate your brand or your business or whatever like a job where you hire people for certain positions and you only serve in a specific role. You're good at branding. You know what? I'm the brand strategist for this company. Yes, it's my company. I started it, but I know I'm not a CEO. I know I'm not a COO. I know I'm not a CFO. So let me put people in all these positions. I'm going to work in this role as if I'm somewhat of a pretty much an entrepreneur, but
yeah.
I pretty much I run this thing. So kind of speak to coming from from sports, transitioning into your professional life. What has understanding your role and staying specified in that role? How has that been able to allow you to be successful? And in speaking to that, kind of make reference to what you mentioned earlier as far as dabbling in many things, but all of those things being in alignment with one another.
Absolutely. Okay, so I just feel like I am chopping up all your questions. She wanted me to talk about not dabbling, but I'm still dabbling. You talked about staying in one. I am a disruptor. I am. I am. In every role that I have been in, I have shaken the pot. I've stirred some stuff up. Good trouble. I get in good trouble only. But I always, when working for another company or another organization, not myself, I always believe that one, God gave me this opportunity to learn something. So when I'm stepping in here, I got to remember that. And I ask, let me hear what I'm supposed to hear. Let me learn what I'm supposed to learn. Let me meet who I'm supposed to meet. But also, God is putting me in this space to do some type of work. And even if, the work, of course, is supposed to be my role, but there's always something else. There's always something bigger. I'm a big picture person. So when I go into these spaces, yes, I'm going to do my job, but I also see areas of where I have strengths in. So I'm gonna dibble and dabble over here too. Um, one of my I would say most recent roles as a major gift officer for a very large nonprofit, $40 million nonprofit. And as a major gift officer, I deal with donors. Forward facing roles, those are my thing. I love being out, getting the schmooze, and go to events and things like that. So in these spaces, within my first 3 weeks, we had about 6 donor events. Out of those events, I seen 2 people of color out of all of those events. And so in that space where this organization serves people who predominantly look like me, and there are no donors that look like me, there's nobody in senior leadership that looks like me. So how can these group of people who cannot relate you can relate from circumstances, and that is like class wise, like being raised in this type of community, but off the color of my skin, we cannot relate to each other. So how can you make decisions for a group of people that you can't even relate to? So in that space, I was like, okay, God, you put me here. They like me right now. What can I do um, to, one, bring you glory? Because this nonprofit organization is a Christian based organization. So always, first and foremost, anything that I do is not, not for me. It's a bigger picture. And where can I bring the most impact? So I introduced an event called Inclusion, which was predominantly focused on targeting multicultural leaders of color to learn more about the organization and give their dollars to it. Because right now, Bob and Rick and Dick, they're in their 80s. And that donor money that you're expecting every year from this particular group of older white men and older white women is about to diminish. And if they're not passing that information and those things down to their children to keep putting into this organization, that donor pool is unsustainable. But you have a donor pool of people who you're serving that don't know anything about the organization. So in that space, events was not my role. My role was fundraising. But because I have experience in events and I love to provide an experience to people, they gave me the ability to put this on. In its first year, we raised $12,000 during the event. It's not like this is a $40 million organization. This event was published in the North Texas Catholic, which is the oldest Catholic publication in the area. And there's not a lot of us in this magazine, or even operating in the Catholic diocese as a whole. So I came in, I disrupted. And when I disrupted to the point where I was like, okay, I think I learned enough and I did enough. Let me remove myself from from this space and go somewhere else. But now the event is an annual event because they saw, and this was all right before um, George Floyd and all of the protesting and all of that stuff. This is 5 months, 5 to 6 months prior to all of that. And that little push and then the incidents that followed that made them realize that this is something that they at least need to look into. Granted, I'm only one person and I can only do so much. It is now upon senior leadership and the staff that have the same heart and the same concerns to move the needle forward. And it happened because again, now it's an annual event. So knowing who I was in this space and my values and those things, my responsibility as a leader, I had to I had to disrupt and I had to be a part of the changes that, even though I'm not involved with now, help to push that along. So when you're speaking about everyone having a brand, absolutely. One my favorite people to work with are corporate professionals and helping them brand for their career trajectory. Like, where do you want to go at the end of the day? Right now, you're an account executive, but do you want to be a COO or a CFO in that space? So, how do you brand yourself within your company now, if that's the company you want to work at, or brand yourself in your profession so that when opportunities come about, you're ready to move into that space because you, one, know who you are and know what the end goal is. I think that's where a lot of people miss that part. What's the end goal? Because you can always calculate backwards, figure out the steps that you need to get to the end goal. So building your brand, whether you're a corporate professional or entrepreneur, is essential to how you move um, throughout life. So I 100% agree with you.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I love the information that I've gotten. I want to talk more because obviously the space that you're in, I can relate to, and there's not enough of us that are having this type of conversation. So the more often that we do, the more obvious, or the more it can be just part of the core understanding of our community, why we need to have these things in place. So off of that note, what do you got coming up? Any events? Any books coming out? What are some things that we can kind of point people towards?
Well, new website has launched, jadetenor.com. You can see how everything got going on. It took me a while because I'm a perfectionist when doing my own things, but it's up and it's moving. So, as I mentioned, I founded and run the One Unified Resource Foundation, or our foundation for short. Again, our biggest initiative is mentorship. Well, it's holistic development for young men through mentorship, technology, and scholarship. So we're getting ready to kick off an 8-week program with Wilkinson Middle School in Mesquite, when we had about 200 young men. So we need Black men to come and volunteer and give their time to be a part of this 8-week program. It's 40 minutes a week. It's nothing. You can come in and spend this time with these young men um, outside of the organization. So what really brings attention to the organization is my men's platform. So when I started the foundation, I was trying to figure out, how do I get a bunch of men in the room to tell them, we got your back, we support you, You are a king, you have power, and now we need you to use your power to pour into these young men. How am I going to do that? So I started the men's brunch, which was a annual brunch, and because of the success from the first two, COVID interrupted in there as well. The men that were involved were saying we don't want to wait a year. We want more safe spaces for us to have these real conversations, because even though I'm a woman, I my my hope is to provide them with a space where they feel safe and supported and empowered, but it's not my space to operate. I may say a couple words, but that's for you all. So last year I hosted monthly men's meetups that were all industry specific: men in tech, men in finance, men in community, so forth and so on, which got a lot of attention. So we have some partnerships coming up with American Airlines, some liquor brands, of course, because men like liquor, and these opportunities. So for this year, we are moving to a subscription base for our men. We want them to be able to have access to this platform. We are moving away from the men's brunch. This is now the Men About the Culture platform. It's a platform where we can showcase the diverse ways that men lead. Whether you're a dance teacher or an athlete or entertainer, we want to provide a platform for men um, to have a safe space where they can feel empowered to have these conversations and pour into each other. So we are continue to expand the Men About the Culture platform. We'll start our monthly meetup back in March, and our quarterly meetups, which will be member only and invite only, something really exclusive. All of these events have been just amazing, and the support from the men has just wow, it's amazing that but I also am fulfilling a need. Men need to have a safe space for them to have these conversations, to let go of their anger, or just to vent, or to cry, or to pray with other men. And I'm so happy that I've been able to provide that space for them to be able to do those things. And outside of those really serious but super awesome things, I am getting ready to go back to Ghana. I am part of the inaugural African Sports Festival, where we have several Ghanaian NFL players coming home to do football camps and clinics. We will have the first flag football game um, in March, and then we'll be back in June hosting the first bowl game called the Diaspora Bowl, where we'll be bringing over HBCU and free agent players to come play in Africa. And closer, if y'all can make it to Dallas on the 22nd, Black Excellence Night, which is founded and hosted by one of my colleagues, Miss Deanna McCreary. She put together a night specifically for Black professionals and entrepreneurs to come into here locally, the American Airlines Center, where the Dallas Mavs play. Have real conversations, have some vendors, and then attend the game. And then afterwards, we party, and I will be hosting the midnight networking party on the 22nd of this month here in Dallas um, at the Virgin Hotel. So again, doing dibbling and dabbling and getting into things, but just really focused on the impact that we can make in the community, and continuing to make impact. And one of the big things that I am stressing this year is cooperative economics. We cannot grow without each other. We make more impact together, and that is the way for 2023. So how can we get together and turn things upside down?
Love it.
Well, you're amazing, and you're dipping and dapping in the right things. So keep dipping, You know, they can be like, what are they? Somebody that logs in right now is gonna be like, what is this dip
Dip
and
and
dap? You have to go back to the beginning of the show if you want to know what we're
Right.
talking about. But
Right.
you are absolutely amazing, sis, and I'm just so excited about what you're doing and what you're going to do. Um, and we just really look forward to, now that we're family. This You're no longer a guest. We are family, and we just really look forward to continuing to do our work. Right, and life is about serving. And if you're not serving in your life, you're not sowing seeds, then you're not truly living. And I live, by that. And I'm the same way, just like as you. I have a special place in my heart for our young men, especially our young men. Of color who are athletes, because I know the struggles they have. I lost a brother to, I believe, to depression because of what they deal with as athletes and then transitioning. So, my heart is I'm very invested in that space because of that. But through our organization, HSBA, we're very, that what makes us unique, with Brian having the background in psychology, social work. We really can speak to the needs of these young men, and in the people that they are encountered with. So other leaders, our educators speak in the right language, our people on the job speak in the right language, making sure that we're all working together for the betterment of our young Black men. So we thank you for just continuing to do your part. And continuing to sow seeds. And I know that it's not easy. Brian can contest to that. We talk about this all the time, that it's not always easy being the person that's always sowing, but when you know that it will come around, right? You will see the fruits of your labor. It may not be today, may not be tomorrow, but it will come.
Hold on. Just hold on. Hold on.
It will come. So thank you for your obedience in that space, and continuing to dip and dap, because it's through what you're doing that other young men are going to be saved, and other men, period, are going to be saved, whether young or old, right? It's never too old or never too young to discover who you are or your new self. And so thank you for being in that space and doing that.
Thank you. And Brian, I definitely need you to make your way up, over, up, down here. I have been looking for a man in the mental health space, or that can attest and speak to this. Um, I need you. Like, this is the conversation I have to have with the. I need you to
Mhm.
be a part of what we got going on. These young men need you. So would love to have more conversations with both of you outside of this about how we can work together again to continue to make more impact, not only here in Africa too, because
Everywhere.
the
Mhm.
opportunity is open. One of my big goals by the time I'm 40 is to be a global citizen, and
Oh,
so
you haven't crossed over yet? Oh.
no. I gotta I got a good minute before I get there, but those minutes fly by so fast, and I got a lot of work to do, and I know that I could get that done if I have the right people,
Yeah.
to partner with. So again, cooperative economics for the year, and I would love to continue this conversation and work with you all more.
Well, we definitely will. This one, we definitely will. And so before we close out, if you can give us your website one more time where people can find the event, and that way we can make sure the audience knows where to find you to help support that space. Can you tell us again slowly what your website is, the name of your
Absolutely.
website?
My website is my name, jadetinner.com, JADETINNER.com. And you can find me on the majority of social media platforms at I am underscore Jade Tenner. I try to
Oh,
make things simple for people. Yeah,
yeah. Well,
Like
when
we
you're
can't
dipping and
follow.
dapping in a lot of things, you can be like, okay, now where do I find her?
right. And just search my
Yeah,
name.
I mean your website. Website is, I mean, it's plain simple. Your name first, name.
Yeah,
I've been checking it out. Looking good over here.
thanks.
So
Thanks.
yeah,
That makes me feel
definitely,
so good.
definitely, definitely, we're gonna be speaking because the area that you're really focusing on, that you're saying you need help in, that's where our heart lies. Like that's like a lot of people don't hear about a lot of my mental health work. Most people hear about my financial education work. I bring all of my social sciences into my entrepreneurial space and speak on the importance of proper finances, so that all those other problems aren't necessarily problems anymore. But like that's where my heart lies, is helping people speak about things that are taboo, speak about things that they don't feel comfortable talking to others about, and being able to break through to those young men who typically don't let anybody else in. Like that's what I absolutely love. So we definitely will speak further on that.
Absolutely. Well, again, I got 200 boys up here that need mentors. Um, we are developing an app. We are pretty much, done with the foundation as, a way that mentors and mentees can meet each other in the space. We always got our phones in our hand, but we don't always have the ability to meet in person. So this app will allow our mentees and mentors to communicate, whether they're locally or across the country. So, um, again, look forward to continued conversation with you all about how we can, make more impact.
Oh yeah. Well, we're going to put you in the backstage as we close off the show. Don't go anywhere, because we're going to come back and close off with you. We close
Okay.
off with the live audience. But we just want to thank you again for everything you've been able to share, for the work that you're doing, and for just leading the way. So many people like us, like, could potentially help completely revolutionize something that you're doing, but unless you took on it first, it never would have happened. Same thing with us. Some things that we currently got going, somebody like yourself can completely help us blow it out of the water, but we had to put it together first. So thank you for leading the way in your area,
Thank
and
you.
we got some collaborations in store
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
for sure.
Thank
All
you.
right, so let's
Thank
get you
you.
backstage. Thank you again, and we'll be with you shortly.
Well, what you got to say, Brian?
Um, that was a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing you said all the time. Yeah, so absolutely amazing. I knew when I saw the work. I mean, I didn't know all the things that she was doing, of course, because we like to save a lot for the show, but just seeing her, how passionate she's about what she's doing, and being very consistent and intentional with what she's doing is so important. But what speaks value is like knowing that she's in the space where people are helping young Black men, but they're not even Black. Like, what are we doing, right? We have so many people that we need to be able to collaborate, get together, and expand on the gifts and talents that we have to help better our community. And if we're not working together, then who are we really serving? And so it's just really a blessing to know that we have people in our space, or in the same space, that can say, you know, it speaks our same language, talking about the mentoring, the leadership type of programs. And so we have that special space when it has a collaboration of the social work, the psychology, the education space, and now just having a mixture of just adding athletics and having athletics in there. This is going to serve our Black men on all levels, because now we can talk and speak to all young men in different spaces, right? Whether they want to be entrepreneurs, or they want to be athletes, or just learning how to be a young man. So very grateful for the space that she's in, and the relationships that she has built, and just the amount of dedication that she has put towards what she truly believes in.
Yeah, I mean, we got one blank period. We got so off that note, guys. Look like we may have a little bit of a lag on the visual screen, but that's our show for today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely make sure you share out the video. Following us on YouTube, grab the link out. You'll probably see it on our Facebook page, on LinkedIn, so on and so forth. But continue to help us share the message, so that we can continue to help transform the lives of those all around the nation and even the world. Thank you guys again, and we shall see you on the flip side.